Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. There's a lot of things that can wreck your chances to do well. We live in a rather dangerous world. So you've got to be not only wise, you've got to be careful. The danger doesn't always come from outside. The greatest threats come quietly from within. The small mental habits that weaken conviction, the invisible attitudes that corrode discipline. These are the silent killers of success. The thoughts, reactions, and postures of mind that drain energy without warning. They don't shout, they whisper. And by the time most people notice, they've already lost the will to climb higher. The Stoics warned of this long before modern philosophy gave them names. They understood that the mind must be guarded like a fortress, because decay begins in the smallest breach. Indifference, indecision, doubt, worry, overcaution, pessimism and complaining. Each seems harmless at first. Yet together they dismantle everything a disciplined life is built upon. The person who does not master these internal forces becomes ruled by them. And the tragedy is not that they fail, but that they never truly begin. This lesson is not theory. It is the foundation of every achievement, every test of endurance, every rise from weakness to strength. The mind, once disciplined, becomes untouchable, but the mind that allows these silent killers to grow becomes its own undoing. The Stoic path demands awareness, correction, and unwavering control of thought. Once these poisons are identified, they can be purged, and what remains is the unshakable posture of a person who no longer fights life, but commands it. Let's begin. Silent killer number 1. Indifference. Indifference is the quietest destroyer of potential. It does not strike with rage or fear, it simply dulls the edge. It convinces the mind that effort is optional, that days can be traded without meaning, and that existence can be endured without intensity. It is the slow death of direction. Those who drift under its spell no longer choose their path. They are carried by habit and external noise, thinking life will somehow arrange itself into clarity. Yet nothing great emerges from drift. A mountain is not climbed by accident, nor is a disciplined mind built by chance. The indifferent person does not fail because of inability, but because of detachment. They move through life without conviction. Their energy is divided between minor distractions and passive routines that fill time but build nothing. Stoicism teaches that one must act with deliberate intent. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, wrote Marcus Aurelius. Indifference resists this command. It whispers that reflection is enough, that thought without action holds value, that tomorrow can replace today. The Stoic sees this as decay, a form of spiritual corrosion that disguises itself as calm but is rooted in apathy. Every human carries the potential for renewal, but indifference prevents it. It is the state of the lukewarm spirit, not destroyed, not alive. Success demands fire, a kind of self-directed urgency that forces motion even when comfort tempts stillness. The indifferent person wakes each day without aim. They are present but absent, functioning yet fading. They speak of wanting progress, yet never lift themselves into the posture of one who demands it. Seneca said that, while we waste our time hesitating and postponing, life is slipping away. Indifference is that hesitation stretched across a lifetime. The indifferent mind always seeks escape from responsibility. It wants to avoid the weight of decision and the discomfort of growth. It hides behind the illusion of balance, mistaking avoidance for peace. But peace cannot exist without engagement. A person who refuses challenge cannot know calmness, only numbness. Stoicism does not reward passive acceptance of life. It rewards the disciplined engagement with it. The indifferent person treats time as if it were renewable. The Stoic treats time as a sacred currency that must never be wasted. Success requires energy directed toward mastery. Indifference redirects that energy toward stagnation. The indifferent person looks busy, yet moves nowhere. They are always preparing, always thinking, always waiting. The Stoic does not wait for the right moment. They make the moment right. They understand that inaction is itself a decision, one that shapes character through decay. To drift is to choose mediocrity. To act with purpose is to declare life as something worth shaping. The difference between the two is not knowledge, but fire, the willingness to move with intent. Indifference often begins as fatigue. The mind grows tired of discipline and seeks rest in the comfort of routine. What begins as a pause becomes a habit, and what was once a habit becomes identity. When identity weakens, purpose dissolves. The Stoic remedy is daily self-examination, to observe one's thoughts, test one's motives, and ensure that every action carries weight. At dawn, wrote Marcus Aurelius, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. This reminder destroys indifference at its root by reconnecting the individual to duty. Duty is the enemy of indifference. When one remembers that life is brief, that breath is finite, and that moments cannot be reclaimed, indifference loses its power. A disciplined person does not act because they feel inspired. They act because it is necessary. The indifferent person waits for feeling. The Stoic acts from principle. This is the distinction between those who live with direction and those who are carried by the crowd. Every delay in discipline reinforces weakness. Every day of disengagement builds the habit of avoidance. The indifferent individual slowly trades potential for comfort until both are gone. In the world of success, indifference appears as politeness, as modesty, as moderation. It pretends to be humility, but is simply the absence of drive. True humility does not mean lack of passion, it means control of passion. The indifferent spirit loses both control and passion. It does not burn, it flickers, it settles for easy pleasures and temporary recognition, forgetting that legacy is built through endurance, not moments of comfort. The Stoic who rises each day with direction knows that self-respect is built in motion, not in theory. Indifference poisons environments as well as individuals. A team led by an indifferent leader will decline, for no one can rise above the energy of the one they follow. A family guided by an indifferent parent drifts into confusion. A society that accepts indifference grows fragile, for conviction holds the walls of civilization together. Every era that fell into decay first fell into apathy. The Stoic response is personal responsibility to maintain one's flame even when the world cools. The indifferent spirit complains of circumstances. The disciplined mind creates conditions. Indifference also masks itself as contentment. It says, I am fine as I am, when nothing has been tested, refined, or proven. Stoicism honors contentment only when it follows effort. Satisfaction before effort is delusion. True peace comes from the assurance that one has done what could be done, not from avoidance of effort itself. The indifferent person fears the discomfort of progress, yet progress requires discomfort. Every skill, every virtue, every victory begins with friction. The Stoic accepts friction as the forge of strength. The indifferent person retreats from it and calls their retreat wisdom. A person's future is built in silence, in the hours no one watches, in the moments between decisions. Indifference thrives in those same spaces, turning small neglects into lifelong patterns. The Stoic keeps guard over these intervals. They know that decay begins not in collapse, but in small concessions. Skipped routines, unkept promises, delayed action. These are the seeds of mediocrity. The disciplined individual does not allow them to take root. They understand that success is not one grand effort, but 1,000 quiet refusals to drift. Indifference can disguise itself as rationality. It speaks with calm reason, saying, "This isn't worth the energy." It convinces the person to withdraw from effort under the pretense of being sensible, but life rewards those who engage, not those who excuse themselves. The Stoic mind measures effort not by comfort but by necessity. It asks, "Is this worthy of my strength?" If yes, it commits fully. If no, it leaves without resentment. Indifference does neither. It lingers. It wastes time in half-effort, trapped between thought and action. Many people lose years to this silent killer. They tell themselves they are thinking things through, waiting for alignment, planning their next move. The truth is simpler. They are afraid of commitment. Indifference feeds on fear of failure. It allows a person to appear calm while secretly surrendering to hesitation. The Stoic knows failure is not ruin. Inaction is. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The indifferent person is the perfect example of this waste. They confuse stillness for patience, delay for wisdom, and comfort for peace. When a person becomes indifferent, their relationship with excellence collapses. They no longer hold themselves to a standard. Mediocrity becomes acceptable. The Stoic path rejects this completely. Discipline means maintaining a standard even when no one watches. Indifference discards standards when the crowd stops watching. The disciplined person asks, "Is this my best?" The indifferent person asks, "Is this enough?" That question marks the beginning of decline. Once one accepts enough as a rule, progress dies. The cure for indifference is directed motion. The Stoic does not wait for motivation. They create movement to summon it. When a person begins to act, the fog of apathy clears. Every completed task reawakens confidence. Every deliberate act restores identity. The body follows the mind, but the mind is revived through the act. Success returns when movement replaces hesitation. This is the essence of Stoic practice. Reason commands, action obeys, virtue strengthens. The indifferent person lives in thought without command. The Stoic unites thought and deed as one continuous discipline. Indifference also kills relationships. It drains vitality from conversation, dulls gratitude, and replaces engagement with detachment. The Stoic maintains awareness that every encounter is temporary. Every moment shared is irreplaceable. This awareness intensifies appreciation. Indifference erases it. Those who allow indifference to govern their social world lose connection with meaning. They drift between people as they drift between tasks, half present, half living. To live fully, one must care deeply and act decisively. Indifference has no drama, no explosion. It does not announce its presence. It simply removes urgency from life. One day becomes like the next. A person wakes and feels nothing pressing upon the heart. No duty, no hunger, no flame. This is the condition Stoicism warns against most: existing without direction. No duty, no hunger, no flame. This is the condition Stoicism warns against most: existing without direction. The discipline of a Stoic life is meant to prevent this. Each day is treated as if it were the last. Each action is measured against virtue. Each decision is made under the awareness that time is fleeing. Indifference forgets all of this. A mind that has fallen into indifference must be trained as one would train a neglected body, through resistance, discipline must return through routine. Small acts of effort rebuild the chain of command between will and body. The Stoic rises early, practices order, and engages in work not for recognition, but to prove control over self. Each completed act is a reminder that life still responds to effort. When the indifferent person begins to act with order, they begin to remember themselves. Indifference can be eliminated only through engagement. Philosophy without application strengthens it. The Stoic studies philosophy not to sound wise, but to live precisely. They understand that to think clearly, one must act clearly. Every day offers an opportunity to reassert will, to choose a path, to confront delay, to eliminate excuses. The indifferent mind waits for better timing. The Stoic mind acts as if timing no longer exists. This is how life is reclaimed, not in sudden transformation, but in consistent motion. The indifferent person often justifies inaction with phrases like, "I'm fine where I am," or "I don't need much." Stoicism does not condemn simplicity. It condemns stagnation disguised as simplicity. To live with little is noble. To settle for little out of fear is weakness. The Stoic seeks contentment through mastery, not through surrender. When one earns peace through effort, it holds weight. When one avoids effort for peace, it evaporates under challenge. Indifference seeks comfort. The Stoic seeks command. There is no achievement without care. Every great life begins with deep concern for one's conduct, one's duty, one's time. Indifference removes concern and replaces it with distraction. The Stoic reverses this by bringing the mind back to the essentials. What is within my control? What must be done today? What standard will I hold myself to? Through these questions, discipline awakens. Through discipline, success is restored. The indifferent person never asks. They live as though time is infinite, unaware that life is counting. Indifference erases momentum. The Stoic builds it deliberately. Each act of engagement strengthens identity, and identity fuels consistency. Success is a reflection of identity. When identity weakens, progress dissolves. The indifferent person no longer recognizes themselves in motion. The Stoic reclaims motion by aligning effort with principle. They work not for applause, but for coherence, to ensure that what they think, say, and do form one line. In that alignment, indifference cannot survive. Indifference often follows failure. When the mind grows tired of disappointment, it retreats into detachment. But Stoicism teaches that setbacks are part of the process of strength. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way, said Marcus Aurelius. The indifferent person interprets failure as a reason to stop. The Stoic interprets it as proof of movement. Every failure is feedback. Every test is evidence that life is still being lived with effort. Indifference fears the test. Discipline embraces it. Those who fall into indifference often lose their sense of urgency. They think in long stretches, one day I'll change, one day I'll try, but no moment beyond this one is guaranteed. The Stoic lives with awareness of mortality, not as fear, but as motivation. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. This remembrance fuels life, for it reminds the mind that every action matters now. Indifference fades when urgency returns. Urgency is not panic. It is precision. It is the knowledge that the time for excellence is always now. The indifferent person often believes they are at peace because they feel no conflict. The Stoic knows that peace without progress is decay. True peace is earned through order, through alignment with reason, through mastery of impulse. The absence of effort is not peace. It is emptiness. The Stoic replaces emptiness with engagement. They understand that the body must serve the mind, and the mind must serve principle. This hierarchy creates meaning. Indifference dissolves it, leaving the person unanchored. In modern life, indifference is everywhere. Endless entertainment, constant distraction, the normalization of low standards. The Stoic stands apart from this by practicing deliberate attention. They know that where attention goes, energy follows. To reclaim attention is to reclaim life. The indifferent person gives attention away freely, scattering focus across trivialities. Success requires concentrated attention. Without it, even talent becomes useless. Indifference fragments the mind. Stoicism restores it through presence. Presence is the opposite of indifference. When a person is fully engaged in what they do, every action carries weight, every moment becomes meaningful. The Stoic aims to live with presence, in thought, in work, in relationship. They do not rush, they do not drift, they inhabit their duty completely. Indifference, by contrast, lives in absence. It looks without seeing, listens without hearing, works without purpose. The difference is total awareness, the state of being fully alive within one's task. The path out of indifference is awareness followed by action. To recognize the drift is the first victory, to move against it is the second. From that movement, clarity begins to return. The Stoic rebuilds discipline piece by piece, knowing that mastery is repetition, not inspiration. Each repetition strengthens will. Each act weakens apathy. Eventually, the mind remembers what it feels like to care deeply again. That is the rebirth of success, when interest replaces indifference, when effort replaces ease, when purpose replaces passivity. Indifference will always tempt the comfortable mind. The Stoic must resist it daily. Success belongs to those who remain awake to their duty, who treat each day as a deliberate act, not an accident. To live with indifference is to exist half alive. To live with discipline is to honor the gift of consciousness itself. Every hour holds a choice, drift or direct. The Stoic chooses direction, and in that choice, indifference dies. Silent killer. Number 2. Indecision. Indecision is the paralysis of will. It is the condition of a mind that fears error more than it values progress. Nothing wastes potential faster than hesitation disguised as caution. The Stoic sees indecision not as lack of knowledge but as failure of courage. The world belongs to those who move, and indecision is the quiet surrender of movement. Each delay builds uncertainty. Each hesitation strengthens weakness. Every moment spent balancing between choices erodes confidence, until the person becomes a spectator of their own life. The indecisive mind lives in permanent debate. It does not trust its own judgment and therefore seeks endless validation. It rehearses possibilities instead of testing them. The Stoic does not confuse thought with wisdom. They understand that wisdom emerges only through engagement. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Indecision violates this principle. It allows one to imagine action without commitment, to plan endlessly without consequence. The result is the slow death of authority within the self. Indecision feeds on perfectionism. The person waits for perfect certainty before acting, forgetting that certainty is born from experience, not before it. The Stoic understands that clarity follows engagement. No philosophy can remove risk. No reasoning can replace courage. To live well, one must be willing to decide and then accept responsibility for that decision. The indecisive person wishes for guarantees. The Stoic lives by principles. Principles are stronger than outcomes, for they give direction even when the result is unknown. When the mind refuses to decide, it trains itself in weakness. Decision-making is a muscle. Without use, it atrophies. Each avoided choice weakens conviction. Each postponed act creates dependence on external influence. The Stoic practices decision daily in small matters first, to remain sharp for the larger ones. They know that hesitation multiplies the weight of every future decision. The mind that delays simple tasks will tremble before great ones. The Stoic mind, disciplined by practice, moves from judgment to execution without excess debate. Indecision often hides behind intellect. The person believes they are thinking deeply when they are merely avoiding risk. Thought without motion becomes decay. The Stoic values thought as preparation for action, not replacement for it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away." The indecisive individual acts as though time is infinite. They tell themselves they are being careful, but the truth is that caution without action is cowardice disguised as wisdom. To think clearly is noble, to act clearly is divine. The danger of indecision is that it drains life of momentum. Momentum is what keeps energy aligned with purpose. When one hesitates, the current of time moves without them. They begin to feel detached from their own direction, as though life is happening elsewhere. Stoicism teaches that power lies in agency, the ability to act within one's control. Indecision abandons that control. It leaves fate to chance, then blames circumstances for what courage could have altered. Indecision spreads through every domain. In work, it kills opportunity. In relationships, it breeds instability. In thought, it destroys confidence. The Stoic recognizes that decisiveness does not mean recklessness. It means clarity of value. When a person knows what they stand for, decisions become easier. The indecisive mind is one that has never clarified its hierarchy of principles. It hesitates because everything seems equally weighted. The Stoic decides based on virtue. What aligns with reason, integrity, and strength must be chosen, even when it is hard. Every great transformation in life begins with a decision. The commitment to change precedes the process of change. Indecision blocks transformation by keeping a person suspended between identity and aspiration. They live as both the old self and the imagined one, belonging to neither. The Stoic ends this tension by acting. They do not wait for confidence to appear. They generate it through motion. Courage is the byproduct of forward movement. Fear retreats only when confronted. The indecisive person waits for fear to fade. It never does. The habit of indecision often starts small, in daily choices that seem insignificant. The refusal to choose grows into a pattern that infects larger aspects of life. The Stoic disrupts this early by training the mind to decide quickly on matters of little consequence. This builds the reflex of command. Once the mind learns that it can trust its own judgment, major decisions no longer feel paralyzing. The Stoic does not overthink what can be resolved by principle. They make a rule, decide, act, review, adjust. Repetition forges strength. Indecision also just. Repetition forges strength. Indecision also erodes reputation. People lose trust in those who cannot choose. A leader who hesitates breeds uncertainty in others. The Stoic understands that leadership begins with self-leadership. If one cannot command their own mind, they cannot guide another. Decisiveness is not about speed, it is about presence. It communicates confidence, direction, and integrity. The indecisive person communicates instability. They are at the mercy of conditions. The Stoic acts according to inner law, independent of outcome. Indecision often appears virtuous. It seems thoughtful, careful, mature. In truth, it is indulgence of fear. The Stoic examines fear directly. They know that fear is not an external enemy, but an internal illusion magnified by inaction. The longer one delays, the larger the illusion grows. Decision shrinks fear by exposing it to reality. Once acted upon, most fears dissolve under evidence. The Stoic faces uncertainty by movement. Indecision feeds it through delay. Those who master decision-making do not wait for perfect information. They seek sufficient clarity and proceed. Life is a moving target. The Stoic knows that action refines perception, indecision freezes both. A decision made in motion can be corrected. A decision never made creates nothing to correct. The world changes through those who act, not through those who wait. The Stoic lives by direction, not by permission. They measure decisions by alignment with reason, not by the comfort of certainty. Indecision weakens identity. The longer one avoids commitment, the more fragmented the self becomes. Each unmade choice divides the will. The person becomes many versions of themselves, all imagined, none realized. The Stoic seeks unity between intention and action. They understand that to decide is to define oneself. The act of decision is the act of creation. It builds boundaries, purpose, and order. The indecisive person has no boundary. They are everywhere and nowhere, trapped in possibility. The Stoic mind eliminates indecision through preparation and principle. They prepare by understanding reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. They live by principle so that when choices appear, they already know the direction consistent with virtue. This shortens deliberation and strengthens resolve. The Stoic does not chase emotion in choice. They seek clarity of reason. Indecision chases emotion, fear, doubt, the opinions of others. It listens outward instead of inward. The disciplined mind listens inward and obeys its judgment. Indecision also drains time, the most irreplaceable asset. A day lost to hesitation is a day that will never return. The Stoic holds time as sacred and therefore treats decisions as sacred. They would rather make an imperfect decision than waste existence in deliberation. Perfection is a myth. Progress is truth. The Stoic advances through imperfection and corrects through wisdom. The indecisive person attempts perfection through waiting and achieves nothing. Inaction feels safe, but it corrodes trust in the self. When one decides, they prove to their mind that they are capable of command. When one delays, they teach their mind to doubt its own authority. The Stoic trains decision through practice, to speak when truth must be spoken, to act when duty calls, to move when hesitation tempts stillness. Each act of decision restores command. The goal is not to be right every time, but to be strong every time. Indecision thrives in comfort. It is rare among those who live with urgency. The Stoic cultivates urgency by contemplating mortality. Memento mori is not a phrase of despair. It is a discipline of precision. When one remembers that time is short, hesitation loses its charm. Every moment becomes an opportunity to act in accordance with virtue. The Stoic does not hoard moments. They use them. The indecisive person hoards life as if it can be saved. The Stoic spends it as if it were earned. When decisions are avoided, life begins to choose for you. Circumstances, chance, and the will of others take control. The Stoic sees this as slavery. Freedom exists only in conscious choice. The act of decision is the act of reclaiming sovereignty. Even when the choice leads to failure, it remains noble, for it was chosen. To live without choice is to live as a passenger. The Stoic demands to be the navigator of their own existence, steering even through storm. Indecision, left unchecked, evolves into regret. The person looks back and sees a pattern of almosts, of near beginnings, of unfulfilled aims. Regret is not born from failure, but from avoidance. Stoicism eliminates regret by eliminating hesitation. The Stoic prefers failure through courage to decay through delay. They understand that life's worth is measured not by avoidance of error, but by engagement with effort. To decide is to live. To delay is to fade. Every decision reinforces or weakens character. Small choices train the will for greater ones. The Stoic makes decisions from principle, not mood. They know moods are unstable, but principles are constant. When one learns to decide based on values, clarity replaces confusion. The indecisive person follows mood and thus lives in chaos. The Stoic follows principle and thus lives in order. The ability to decide defines the strength of mind. Indecision often masquerades as humility, the pretense of letting life unfold naturally, but this is surrender, not serenity. Stoic calm is active, not passive. It is composure in motion. The indecisive mind confuses surrender with wisdom. The Stoic acts with stillness within, not stillness without. Their tranquility comes from mastery of reaction, not avoidance of responsibility. To wait for fate is to be ruled by it. To decide is to collaborate with it. The remedy for indecision is structure. The Stoic builds frameworks that simplify choice, duty before desire, reason before impulse, action before comfort. With these rules, decision becomes instinct. The mind trained in order no longer fears consequence because it trusts its integrity. This is the highest form of freedom, when one's own mind is reliable under pressure. Indecision thrives in chaos. Discipline thrives in order. Indecision dies when the individual begins to live with purpose. Purpose gives direction to thought, focus to effort, and weight to time. The Stoic defines purpose not through fantasy, but through contribution, through work that aligns with virtue and serves reality. Once purpose is clear, decisions become natural extensions of that aim. The indecisive person lacks purpose and therefore lacks priority. They drift between options because nothing feels meaningful enough to choose. To live decisively is to live fully. The Stoic does not fear mistakes because they trust in their ability to learn. They understand that strength is not built in perfect choices, but in consistent ones. The mind that decides grows sharper with each act. The mind that delays grows softer with each hesitation. Indecision is the erosion of strength disguised as thoughtfulness. Decision is the practice of strength disguised as simplicity. In every generation, those who achieve mastery share one trait. They decide quickly and adjust intelligently. They do not cling to error, nor do they retreat from it. They move, they learn, they refine. This is the Stoic process. Clarity through motion, confidence through repetition, power through practice. The indecisive person waits for inspiration. The Stoic creates it through discipline. Decision is momentum. Indecision is decay. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the recognition that virtue is a choice renewed daily. One must choose patience, courage, temperance, justice. These are not inherited, they are decided. Every day is a referendum on character. Indecision is the refusal to vote. The Stoic never abstains. They participate fully in their own becoming. Each decision is a stroke of the chisel, shaping identity from the marble of possibility, the one who decides lives as an artist of self. The one who hesitates leaves the sculpture unfinished. Indecision will always tempt the cautious mind. It will whisper promises of safety and reason. But the Stoic knows that safety is an illusion and reason demands application. Life rewards the mover, the doer, the chooser. To decide is to align oneself with reality. to participate in the unfolding of fate with strength rather than fear. Success belongs to those who act within uncertainty, who trust the integrity of their principles more than the comfort of delay. Every hour holds a decision. The Stoic makes it, the hesitant waits. The result is written in their lives. Silent killer number 3, doubt. Doubt is the quiet erosion of self-trust. It begins as a question and ends as paralysis. It enters through uncertainty and grows through repetition until the mind no longer believes its own commands. The Stoic knows that life is built upon internal authority, the conviction that reason, when trained, can be trusted. Doubt removes that foundation. It convinces the individual that others know better, that time will reveal the answer, that certainty must come before commitment. In this way, doubt steals years disguised as carefulness. The person ruled by doubt measures every possibility twice, but never completes a step. They look outward for validation that cannot exist within the realm of control. Stoicism teaches that the mind must be governed from within, not shaped by external approval. The doubter reverses this order. They live by reaction, not by principle. Their thoughts are consumed by what might go wrong, rather than what must be done. Each hesitation grows roots, and soon the soil of their confidence turns barren. Doubt breeds from comparison. When one looks constantly at the paths of others, their own direction becomes clouded. Success in others becomes evidence of personal inadequacy. The Stoic avoids comparison by remembering that all virtue is self-contained. Each person's path is defined by duty, not competition. To imitate others is to abandon one's own design. The doubter forgets this truth. They spend their energy measuring distance rather than moving forward. Progress demands motion, not measurement. The voice of doubt often pretends to be the voice of reason. It speaks softly, using logic to justify inaction. It says, "You're not ready yet. You need more information. Wait until it feels right." This voice is persuasive because it sounds intelligent. But Stoic wisdom recognizes the difference between rational reflection and rationalized fear. True reason directs action. False reason delays it. The longer doubt is entertained, the weaker the will becomes. Each time the mind defers, it teaches itself dependence. Confidence is not arrogance. It is the product of experience and self-command. Doubt attacks both by convincing a person that their past victories were accidents. It reframes strength as luck and effort as coincidence. The Stoic does not indulge this distortion. They remember their own evidence, the times they acted and endured, the proof that discipline creates stability. Confidence is not an emotion, but a record of survival in environments of noise. When a person consumes too many opinions, their inner voice fades. The modern world amplifies confusion by offering endless perspectives without grounding. The Stoic filters this noise through the principle of control. What belongs to me, I command. What does not, I release. Doubt seeks to command the uncontrollable, the approval of others, the certainty of outcome, the prediction of events. The Stoic directs effort only where power exists. By this discipline they conserve energy and restore confidence. Doubt weakens the relationship between thought and execution. The person begins to separate intention from action. They plan with enthusiasm, then hesitate when the time to act arrives. The Stoic keeps these two forces unified. They believe that thought without execution is self-betrayal. Each moment spent in hesitation builds distance between knowledge and reality. The gap widens until belief disappears. The disciplined mind closes that gap daily by immediate application. Reflection leads directly to practice. The Stoic cure for doubt is evidence. The doubter waits for feeling. The Stoic looks for proof. When one acts according to reason, the results, good or bad, become data. Each action, analyzed honestly, builds the foundation of certainty. The doubter fears mistakes because they see them as judgment. The Stoic seeks mistakes because they reveal truth. The person who never acts remains ignorant of their own strength. Doubt thrives in the absence of information. Action generates clarity that thought alone cannot produce. Doubt also corrupts identity. It makes the individual question not only their actions, but their worth. They begin to believe that failure is a reflection of value rather than circumstance. Stoicism separates the two. Failure belongs to events. Worth belongs to virtue. A person can fail and still remain strong, just as a soldier can lose a battle without losing honor. Doubt fuses outcome with identity, and thereby weakens both. The Stoic maintains distance between who they are and what occurs. In that distance lies peace. There is a form of doubt that appears noble, the constant questioning of one's motives in pursuit of self-improvement. But even this can decay into paralysis if it lacks balance. The Stoic practices reflection, not rumination. Reflection leads to action. Rumination loops indefinitely. To question one's motives is wise. To never conclude is weakness. The disciplined mind examines itself, adjusts and proceeds. The doubter examines endlessly and never proceeds. Self-scrutiny becomes self-destruction when it lacks decision. The seeds of doubt often come from early failure. When a person acts and is met with rejection or loss, they internalize the event as proof of inadequacy. The Stoic reframes this through the lens of control. The result is external, but the effort remains internal. They study failure not as humiliation, but as feedback. The doubter does the opposite. They attach emotion to outcome until every attempt becomes a risk to identity. This is how potential becomes fear. The Stoic separates emotion from duty and continues forward with composure. Doubt weakens energy. A mind split between belief and disbelief cannot commit fully to either. The Stoic commits completely to what aligns with reason. If they fail, they refine. If they succeed, they refine further. In both, movement continues. The doubter stops midway, exhausted by indecision. The Stoic endures by action. They understand that certainty is earned in motion, not found in waiting. The still mind breeds confusion. The active mind sharpens through engagement. When a person doubts themselves long enough, they stop attempting difficult things. They remain within narrow comfort zones that require no belief, no risk, no courage. This is the tragedy of doubt. It shrinks life until safety becomes prison. The Stoic refuses to live confined by fear of failure. They would rather fail with integrity than succeed through avoidance. If it is endurable, then endure it, said Marcus Aurelius. The Stoic tests this law daily. Doubt resists the test, and therefore never knows its own capacity. The doubter often relies on the opinions of others to guide direction. They consult endlessly, seeking consensus as a substitute for confidence. The Stoic listens, but decides alone. Counsel can clarify facts, but cannot replace judgment. The mind that depends on approval loses command. Confidence, to the Stoic, is self-sufficiency of judgment. The ability to weigh evidence and act in alignment with reason, regardless of applause or criticism. Doubt is the absence of this independence. In conversation, doubt reveals itself through hesitation. In conduct, through inconsistency. The Stoic trains both voice and action to reflect clarity. They speak with precision, act with consistency, and adjust through reason. Each of these behaviors reinforces self-trust. When thought, speech, and action align, doubt has no ground to stand on. It thrives only where there is internal contradiction. The disciplined life closes those gaps, building harmony between intention and expression. Doubt does not vanish through optimism, it is defeated through understanding. The Stoic does not chant affirmations or deny fear. They expose fear to logic. They analyze the worst possible outcome and measure it against reason. In most cases, the worst is survivable, the pain temporary, the consequences reversible. Knowing this, they proceed. The doubter avoids this analysis and remains under vague anxiety. By facing fear directly, the Stoic dismantles its power. Doubt dissolves in clarity. The mind must be trained to act before emotion intervenes. The Stoic uses structure to prevent the paralysis of doubt. Morning routines, predetermined priorities, and codified principles reduce decision friction. Doubt thrives in disorder. Order replaces it with rhythm. When a person knows what must be done, they stop questioning whether it should be done. The Stoic eliminates space for hesitation by preparing their environment and mind in advance. This is how discipline turns into confidence. Doubt also limits creativity. The fear of imperfection stops innovation. The Stoic sees creation as practice, not performance. They create to refine themselves, not to impress others. Doubt attaches ego to outcome. Stoicism detaches it. When one works without the need for approval, their expression becomes free. Creativity expands where self-consciousness ends. The Stoic achieves mastery not through absence of error, but through persistence in correction. To overcome doubt, one must cultivate evidence of reliability. The Stoic builds small victories deliberately, tasks completed, promises kept, routines maintained. Each success becomes a reminder of capability. The doubter waits for belief to appear before acting. The Stoic acts until belief appears. Faith in self is not emotion, but record. By acting consistently, one proves to their mind that they can be trusted. This is the foundation of confidence that no external praise can replicate. Doubt is most dangerous when it disguises itself as humility. The person says, "I just don't want to be arrogant," when in truth they fear exposure. Stoicism separates humility from fear. True humility is strength without display. It allows confidence to exist quietly. Doubt is noise without substance. It announces insecurity to avoid responsibility. The Stoic carries silence, not uncertainty. Their calmness comes from knowing their direction, not avoiding it. Many people allow doubt to dictate their identity. They label themselves cautious, analytical, perfectionist, terms that sound noble but conceal avoidance. The Stoic removes labels that limit motion. They see themselves not as fixed beings, but as learners in progress. A learner cannot fear error, for learning requires it. Doubt ends when identity shifts from fragile ego to disciplined student. When one accepts growth as the goal, failure loses its threat. Doubt often deepens in isolation. When the mind is left alone with uncertainty, it amplifies it. The Stoic balances solitude with community. They seek mentors, peers, and examples of strength, not for validation, but calibration. Exposure to courage breeds courage. Association with decisive minds strengthens conviction. The doubter avoids such company for fear of inadequacy. The Stoic seeks it to rise. The environment one keeps determines the strength of belief they maintain. Every act of self-discipline is an antidote to doubt. Each time the body obeys the mind remembers its authority. The Stoic uses physical practice, exercise, fasting, routine, as training for psychological command. By conquering the small resistances of the day, they prepare for the larger battles of purpose. Doubt loses ground against the person who consistently keeps promises to themselves. Integrity in small matters builds invulnerability in great ones. When doubt is allowed to grow unchecked, it transforms into cynicism. The person begins to reject all ideals, dismiss all ambition, and mock conviction in others. This is the final stage of decay, when disbelief becomes identity. Stoicism prevents this decline by grounding belief in logic and practice, not blind optimism. The Stoic does not need to pretend everything will work. They trust they will endure whether it does or not. That is unshakable confidence. Doubt destroys leadership. A leader who doubts themselves transmits instability to others. The Stoic leader maintains inner equilibrium even in uncertainty. They decide from principle, adjust with humility, and communicate with calm. People follow clarity. The leader who shows belief in their path empowers belief in others. The doubter cannot inspire, for they themselves have not chosen. The Stoic knows that conviction, not certainty, is what commands respect. To eliminate doubt, one must practice finality in decision. Once chosen, act. Once acted, review, then refine. No endless reconsideration, no post-action regret. The Stoic closes each act cleanly. This habit strengthens the muscle of certainty. The doubter reopens every decision, weakening will through second-guessing. To act and let go is the mark of mental maturity. The Stoic moves forward, carrying only the lesson, never the hesitation. The modern world rewards doubt under the mask of sophistication. To question everything is seen as intelligence, but questioning without conclusion is entropy. Stoicism values inquiry, but only as a step toward clarity. A life spent doubting without deciding is a life half-lived. The Stoic aims for precision. Test, decide, act, adapt. Thought is the servant of action, not its replacement. Doubt reverses the hierarchy. It makes thought the master and leaves the person enslaved to endless consideration. Doubt cannot coexist with discipline. Every repeated act of discipline reinforces trust. When the body obeys the mind daily, belief becomes habit. The Stoic builds this pattern deliberately. They understand that belief becomes habit. The Stoic builds this pattern deliberately. They understand that philosophy without practice is decoration. The disciplined person acts their philosophy until it becomes instinct. In that instinct, doubt disappears. The mind no longer negotiates with weakness because it remembers its own proof. The Stoic recognizes that the cure for doubt is not reassurance, but responsibility. No external words can replace internal evidence. The person must earn their confidence through direct confrontation with difficulty. This is the essence of Stoic courage, to step into uncertainty willingly, trusting one's preparation. When action becomes habit, belief follows naturally. The doubter seeks comfort before challenge. The Stoic seeks challenge to strengthen comfort's foundation. At its core, doubt is a failure of self-knowledge. The person who knows what they value, what they control, and what they can endure has no reason to doubt. Stoicism builds this knowledge daily. Through journaling, reflection, and restraint, one learns their boundaries and strength. This knowledge is armor against uncertainty. The world can shake the surface, but the center remains still. Doubt cannot penetrate a mind that knows itself. Doubt is a thief. It steals time, energy, and identity. It hides behind intelligence but breeds paralysis. It destroys potential not through failure, but through delay. The Stoic does not fear doubt. They expose it. They confront it with action, logic, and endurance. Each day lived with discipline silences its voice a little more. In the end, doubt fades not through faith in fortune, but through proof of will. The one who acts despite uncertainty conquers both failure and fear, and in that conquest, success begins. Silent killer. Number 4. Worry. Worry is the slowest poison of the mind. It feeds on imagination and consumes reason. It creates movement without progress, motion without direction. The Stoic sees worry as a misuse of thought, an indulgence in that which cannot be controlled. To worry is to waste the very faculty meant to liberate us from fear. It binds the mind to possibilities instead of realities. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Worry is that suffering made constant. The worrier believes they are preparing, but in truth they are rehearsing failure. Every scenario they invent drains strength from the present moment. The Stoic understands that energy spent on what lies beyond control is energy stolen from what can be shaped. The worrier confuses concern with care, anxiety with responsibility. Care acts, worry circles, care improves, worry corrodes. Stoicism separates thought that serves from thought that suffocates. Worry is built on attachment. It clings to outcomes and fears their loss. The Stoic practices detachment not as indifference, but as realism. To detach is to accept that no amount of fear can rewrite the laws of chance. The worrier tries to resist the natural flow of events through endless speculation. They believe constant vigilance will protect them from pain, yet the act of worrying becomes the very pain they seek to avoid. Freedom begins when one accepts uncertainty as the condition of existence. A worried mind cannot rest because it demands control over what does not belong to it. It tries to manage the weather of fate with the hands of desire. The Stoic refuses this futility. They divide life into two spheres, what can be controlled and what cannot. Worry belongs entirely to the second. To release it is an act of power. To cling to it is an act of self-harm. The worrier's thoughts are like prisoners pacing the same cell. The Stoic's thoughts move freely within the bounds of purpose. Worry is disguised cowardice. It feels noble because it masquerades as care for others or caution for the future. Yet beneath it lies fear of responsibility. The worrier prefers to imagine problems rather than confront them. The Stoic confronts them head-on, understanding that clarity comes only through engagement. The mind that worries has forgotten its own strength. It magnifies danger and minimizes capability. The Stoic reverses this pattern. They measure themselves, not their fears. The habit of worry is self-reinforcing. Each anxious thought becomes proof of its necessity. The mind learns to equate stillness with danger and agitation with awareness. The Stoic breaks this pattern by cultivating calm under pressure. Calmness is not apathy, it is command. To remain composed when others panic is the mark of inner power. Worry thrives on chaos. Composure suffocates it. The disciplined person trains their body and breath to remain steady when uncertainty strikes. Through steadiness, reason returns. The worrier lives in the future, but the Stoic lives in the present. Time is their boundary of mastery. They know that control ends where the moment ends. To spend thought on what is not yet real is to neglect what is. The worrier loses today in service of tomorrow. The Stoic understands that right action in the present moment is the only shield against misfortune. Worry imagines infinite futures. Discipline acts within one. Worry corrodes health. The constant tension poisons the body as surely as it drains the mind. Muscles tighten, sleep weakens, breath shortens. The Stoic treats the body as the servant of reason and therefore preserves its peace. They practice restraint in thought to protect strength in action. The warrior exhausts themselves in stillness, wearing out their vitality through invisible labor. Anxiety spends more energy than effort ever will. The Stoic conserves energy by spending it only where it counts. Every act of worry is an act of distrust toward one's own ability to endure. The warrior imagines collapse because they have forgotten their resilience. The Stoic remembers their endurance through deliberate hardship. They fast, train, and confront discomfort to prove to the mind that it can bear more than it fears. Each challenge accepted reduces the domain of worry. When one knows they can suffer and remain whole, worry loses its grip. Resilience, not reassurance, is the cure. Worry feeds on ignorance. It grows in the absence of perspective. The warrior sees only one frame, the worst. The Stoic widens vision. They remind themselves of impermanence. All things change, all states pass. No storm is eternal. When the mind remembers the rhythm of nature, it stops trying to freeze the moment. Worry tries to freeze time in control. Stoicism flows with time in trust. To trust the process of reality is not blindness, it is alignment with truth. Worry also thrives on pride. The person who overestimates their control over the world suffers when that illusion breaks. Stoic humility prevents this collapse. By admitting powerlessness in certain domains, the Stoic secures peace in all. To say, "This is not mine to command," is not defeat, it is liberation. The warrior believes they must fix everything. The Stoic focuses on what must be faced. In this focus, peace replaces panic. The difference between preparation and worry is purpose. Preparation organizes, worry obsesses. The Stoic prepares once and acts. The warrior prepares endlessly and never begins. They confuse analysis with protection. The Stoic plans within reason, then releases attachment to outcome. After the decision, only execution remains. The warrior cannot release. They rehearse catastrophe until it becomes their identity. The Stoic finishes thought where action begins. To the warrior, uncertainty is an enemy. To the Stoic, it is a teacher. Uncertainty tests composure, sharpens adaptability, and reveals the depth of one's faith in principle. Every uncertain moment is a chance to apply philosophy, to test calmness against chaos. The warrior resists this trial. The Stoic welcomes it. In accepting uncertainty, they turn anxiety into instruction. Worry fades when life is seen as an opportunity to practice endurance. Worry often masquerades as love. People claim anxiety for others as proof of care. The Stoic understands that love expressed through fear weakens both giver and receiver. True care acts with calm protection, not panic. The anxious parent, friend, or partner spreads instability under the guise of affection. The Stoic cares through presence, guidance, and steadiness. Fear disguised as love creates dependence. Calmness creates trust. The highest form of love is composure in crisis. Worry narrows perception. It makes the smallest issues appear vast and the simplest tasks impossible. The Stoic uses rational proportion to restore scale. They ask, will this matter in a month, a year, a decade? This single question destroys many illusions. Most worries lose weight when measured against time. The disciplined mind refuses to treat the temporary as eternal worry magnifies. Stoic perspective corrects. The warrior believes that by anticipating pain, they can soften it. The Stoic knows that pain anticipated is pain doubled. Reality strikes once, imagination strikes without mercy. To suffer early is to suffer twice. Stoicism trains the mind to face events as they come, not as they might. Each moment contains its own resources for endurance. Worry steals those resources by scattering focus across unreal futures. The The present always holds enough strength when the mind remains in it. Worry also destroys gratitude. It blinds the person to what is stable, fixating only on what might fail. The Stoic guards gratitude as armor. Gratitude grounds awareness in what is real and functioning, not what is missing. The warrior lives in scarcity. The Stoic in sufficiency to wake and count what endures, weakens the grip of anxiety. Gratitude turns the attention away from loss and toward life itself. The mind addicted to worry requires constant correction. Stoic practice provides the tools: journaling, reflection, breathing, detachment, order. Each technique restores the mind to command. When worry arises, the Stoic does not wrestle with it. They observe it as a passing distortion. They remind themselves, this thought is not truth, it is noise. By refusing to personalize worry, they prevent it from nesting in the mind. Observation replaces reaction. Calm returns through awareness. Worry thrives in inaction. The more one delays, the more imagination expands. The Stoic attacks worry through movement. Action limits imagination's reach. Every concrete step cuts off 100 hypothetical ones. The warrior lives in endless rehearsal. The Stoic performs in performance. Fear has no time to grow. The body in motion reclaims control from the anxious mind. The discipline of doing is stronger than the philosophy of fearing. The modern world has institutionalized worry. News cycles, social media, and markets all profit from anxiety. The Stoic resists this collective panic by controlling exposure. They curate inputs as they curate thought. The mind is not a dumping ground for every crisis. To live sanely, one must choose the quality of one's information. The warrior consumes chaos. The Stoic consumes clarity. The difference is not ignorance but selectivity paralysis. It convinces people they are moral because they care. Stoicism teaches that virtue is measured by action, not anxiety. The one who acts with composure serves better than the one who trembles with concern. The warrior confuses motion of mind with motion of will. True morality is effective calmness. To do good under stress without losing stability is the mark of mastery. Worry can never coexist with faith in principle. The Stoics' faith is not mystical, it is logical. They trust that reason, when applied consistently, produces strength. They trust that character, when maintained, attracts stability. They trust that reality, when faced directly, reveals opportunity. This trust replaces the endless questions of the anxious mind with a quiet confidence. Worry dissolves in the presence of conviction. Each person must choose where to place their attention. Worry demands total devotion. It feeds on focus like fire on oxygen. The Stoic starves it through withdrawal of attention. They direct awareness toward task, gratitude, or contemplation. Attention is the currency of the soul. Whatever buys it gains power. Worry is expensive and yields nothing. Stoicism invests awareness where it compounds into strength. The warrior mistakes thought for control, but the Stoic knows control begins in acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval, it means clarity. To accept what is removes the illusion that fear can alter it. The Stoic accepts, adjusts, and acts. The warrior resists, reacts, and repeats. The difference lies in the quality of mind. One clear, one clouded. Acceptance clears the fog through which worry thrives. There is a stillness at the center of the disciplined mind where no worry can reach. It is the stillness of trust in reason, of alignment with virtue, of knowledge of one's endurance. The Stoic returns to this stillness each day through practice. In that silence, worry is exposed as noise without substance. It dissolves under observation. The warrior lives in reaction. The Stoic lives in command. Worry ends not when life becomes easy, but when the mind becomes stable. To live free of worry is not to live free of challenge. It is to meet challenge without surrender of peace. The Stoic remains calm, not because fate is kind, but because they have trained to remain unmoved. They do not expect the world to cooperate. They expect themselves to adapt. Worry is the enemy of adaptability. Calmness is its ally. The person who meets difficulty with composure transforms obstacles into training. The worrier multiplies obstacles through fear. Worry is a habit of disbelief in one's own resilience. It ends the moment one decides to trust their preparation, their endurance, their principles. Stoicism offers this trust through action. Do your duty, accept the rest, and stand firm. The worrier asks, "What if I can't?" The Stoic answers, "Then I will endure." In that answer, peace begins. The one who has learned to endure has nothing left to fear, and therefore nothing left to worry. Silent killer number 5. Overcaution. Overcaution is the silent refusal to live fully. It hides beneath the mask of prudence, presenting itself as wisdom while quietly dismantling courage. It whispers that safety is success, that risk is recklessness, that security is peace. The Stoic rejects this illusion. To the Stoic, life itself is risk. Every breath, every decision, every step into the unknown. To fear risk is to fear reality. Overcaution kills ambition, not with force, but with comfort. The overly cautious mind lives within the boundaries of what is certain. It seeks the predictable, the guaranteed, the familiar. Yet all growth lives beyond that fence. The Stoic knows that control is not found in avoidance but in preparation. The person who prepares can act with calmness in uncertainty. The one who avoids uncertainty remains forever at its mercy. Overcaution believes it can preserve peace by evading conflict, but what it really preserves is weakness. Fear often disguises itself as carefulness. The cautious person tells themselves they are being responsible, yet responsibility includes the duty to act. The Stoic sees stagnation as moral decay, for potential without expression is waste. Overcaution is the slow decay of spirit under the weight of imagined dangers. It tells a person to wait until conditions improve, until all signs align. The Stoic understands that the world never grants perfect timing. Action creates the conditions. Waiting erodes them. Every major endeavor in human history began with risk. The building of empires, the exploration of seas, the creation of art, the pursuit of virtue, all required the courage to confront the unknown. The overly cautious mind contributes nothing to the future, for it invests all energy in self-preservation. Stoicism teaches that virtue thrives through engagement, not protection. To protect oneself from all harm is to protect oneself from all meaning. Life's value is discovered through exposure to challenge. Overcaution stems from attachment to comfort. The person fears losing what they have, and thus forfeits the possibility of becoming more. The Stoic does not despise comfort, but refuses to depend on it. They rehearse loss through voluntary hardship to prove to the mind that survival does not depend on luxury. When one learns to live with little, fear of loss dissolves. Overcaution dies when comfort loses its power to command. The cautious spirit confuses safety with stability. Stability is built through adaptability, not avoidance. The Stoic adapts by testing themselves against adversity. Each encounter with risk sharpens clarity. Overcaution dulls perception by eliminating friction. Without friction, strength cannot form. The Stoic knows that resilience is the only true security. The person who avoids risk builds walls of illusion. When life inevitably shifts, those walls collapse, leaving them unprepared. Overcaution paralyzes decision-making. The person calculates endlessly, seeking certainty before commitment. They believe the right choice eliminates risk. The Stoic knows that no decision can remove uncertainty. It can only transfer it into action. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. The Stoic acts while afraid, trusting principle more than comfort. Overcaution acts only when fear is gone, and therefore acts never. The world belongs to those who move. The overly cautious mind also corrupts ambition. It convinces a person to aim lower to avoid disappointment. It says, "Settle for what's reasonable." While silencing the voice of potential, the Stoic honors reason, but never worships limitation. Reason guides action. It does not confine it. To live rationally is to assess risk clearly and proceed in alignment with virtue, not to retreat into mediocrity. Overcaution mistakes moderation for timidity and calls it wisdom. Overcaution is not a defense mechanism, it is a slow surrender. It trades long-term fulfillment for short-term relief. The Stoic understands that discomfort is temporary, but avoidance creates permanence of regret. A day avoided is a day lost. A challenge declined is a strength never developed. The cautious mind grows weaker with every decision it postpones. The disciplined mind grows stronger with every test it accepts. The cautious person seeks to eliminate uncertainty from life. The Stoic seeks to operate skillfully within it. Uncertainty is not an enemy to be defeated, but a field to be navigated. The sailor cannot command the sea, but they can master the ship. Overcaution refuses to sail until the ocean is calm. The Stoic learns to steer through storms. Mastery, not avoidance, defines the Stoic's peace. Overcaution also diminishes the capacity to trust. Those who fear risk rarely trust themselves or others. They rely on control to replace faith. The Stoic builds trust through consistency of principle. They know that control is limited, but integrity is absolute. When the foundation of action is virtue, outcomes lose their threat. The overly cautious person depends on guarantees. The Stoic depends on preparation and discipline. One lives in anxiety, the other in strength. The cautious life breeds regret in silence. It appears calm on the surface but hides turbulence beneath. The unchosen paths echo louder than the taken ones. The Stoic seeks to eliminate regret by living decisively. They prefer mistakes of action to mistakes of hesitation. Every failure contains instruction. Every avoidance contains decay. Overcaution guarantees only one result, the knowledge of what might have been. Fear magnifies when unchallenged. The cautious person nurtures their fear by protecting it. The Stoic exposes it to daylight. They deliberately do what they fear within reason until fear loses its novelty. Exposure creates immunity. Avoidance creates sensitivity. The person who avoids discomfort becomes ruled by it. The Stoic trains through hardship to reduce vulnerability. Overcaution multiplies fragility through absence of exposure. Overcaution shrinks imagination. The mind that fears risk cannot envision greatness. It edits possibility before it can breathe. The Stoic expands imagination through courage. They allow themselves to see what could be, knowing that even failure in pursuit is nobler than success in retreat. A vision unattempted is a dream wasted. The cautious spirit guards dreams until they rot. The disciplined spirit risks them to give them form. In leadership, overcaution kills progress. A leader paralyzed by fear of loss stifles the energy of those they lead. The Stoic leader understands that uncertainty is inevitable. Their steadiness under risk gives others strength. Caution without courage breeds stagnation. Courage without caution breeds recklessness. The Stoic balances both. measured, alert, and unafraid. Overcaution cannot lead because it refuses exposure to consequence. Overcaution thrives in times of comfort. When society grows soft, its members fear inconvenience more than failure. The Stoic resists this softness through voluntary difficulty. They practice effort when others rest, discipline when others drift. Comfort is not an enemy, but dependence on comfort is. Overcaution seduces with ease. Stoicism awakens through challenge. The body grows strong through resistance. So does the mind. The cautious person idolizes security. They make decisions not by potential, but by protection. The Stoic makes decisions by alignment with virtue. Security without virtue is decay disguised as safety. The Stoic would rather risk discomfort for integrity than trade freedom for protection. Overcaution worships the illusion of permanence. The Stoic accepts impermanence and therefore lives fully within it. Overcaution feeds on doubt. It convinces a person that failure will destroy them. The Stoic knows that failure refines them. To be tested is to be taught. Each setback exposes a weakness to strengthen. The cautious avoid exposure and therefore remain untested, unproven, unchanged. They fear stagnation more than defeat. The overly cautious person confuses control with stability. They attempt to script life to eliminate surprise. Stoicism reminds us that surprise is the nature of existence. The wise person prepares for variety, not predictability. They build character strong enough to adapt, not fragile enough to require control. The cautious crave guarantees. The Stoic cultivates flexibility. The difference is freedom. Overcaution also damages relationships. It prevents connection by fearing vulnerability. The cautious heart protects itself from pain and thereby from love. The Stoic accepts vulnerability as a necessary risk of meaning. To trust another is to accept uncertainty. To avoid it is to live alone in false safety. Overcaution isolates. Courage connects. The Stoic practices courage in both battle and affection. The cautious mind is obsessed with preservation. It forgets that nothing preserved lives forever. The Stoic values creation over conservation. They preserve principles, not possessions. Overcaution hoards energy, time, and emotion, but produces nothing. The Stoic expends them toward growth. To live is to spend. The miser of experience dies rich in fear and poor in memory. Overcaution paralyzes innovation. It kills new ideas before they form. The Stoic innovator takes measured risk because they understand that stagnation is more dangerous than failure. Progress is born from error refined by persistence. Overcaution prefers repetition to discovery. The Stoic chooses evolution. The cautious cling to what worked yesterday. The disciplined build what must exist tomorrow. The path to freedom requires confrontation with risk. Stoicism transforms risk into discipline by directing courage through principle. Courage without principle is chaos. Principle without courage is stagnation. The overly cautious person has principle without movement. The Stoic unites both, moving forward through order. Their calmness is not absence of fear, but mastery over it. Overcaution seeks to remove fear. Stoicism teaches control of response. Overcaution distorts time. It makes a person wait for perfect moments that never arrive. The Stoic recognizes that time is indifferent. Waiting changes nothing. Only action does. The cautious lose life in preparation. The Stoic gains life through participation. The moment one begins, the world aligns with possibility. The moment one hesitates, the world moves on. The cautious chase a train that never stops. The Stoic boards the one already in motion. To overcome overcaution, one must train in acceptance of failure. The Stoic practices failing with dignity. They detach worth from result. Each attempt is an exercise of will, a declaration of participation in life. The cautious avoid failure and therefore avoid identity. A person who never fails has never fully lived. The Stoic would rather be bruised by life than embalmed by fear. Overcaution corrupts the mind's perception of scale. Small risks appear monumental because the person has lost perspective. The Stoic restores scale through logic. They ask, what is truly at stake? Most fears dissolve under scrutiny. Overcaution thrives in exaggeration. Stoic rationality shrinks fear to its proper size. Once a fear is named, it loses power. The Stoic builds courage as a discipline, not an emotion. Courage is trained through repetition of risk, through exposure to uncertainty until it becomes familiar. Overcaution weakens through avoidance. Every time fear wins, confidence retreats. Every time one acts despite fear, confidence expands. Courage is a ledger written in repeated defiance of hesitation. The cautious person writes no entries. Overcaution often masquerades as morality. It claims to be careful for the sake of others, but many times it is self-protection in disguise. True moral strength requires decisive action for what is right, even when it involves risk. The Stoic serves duty before safety. The cautious serve comfort before cause. In this reversal, virtue is lost. The remedy for overcaution is movement guided by principle. The Stoic does not advocate recklessness, they advocate decisive wisdom. Every calculated risk taken in alignment with virtue strengthens self-trust. Every avoidance weakens it. To live courageously is not to gamble, but to act where the cost of inaction is decay. Overcaution measures danger too much and opportunity too little. In every generation, civilizations rise and fall by the spirit of their citizens. When courage declines, progress halts. The Stoics' duty is to preserve this courage within themselves. A society of cautious minds becomes a society of quiet decline. The Stoic refuses participation in this collective retreat. They act as proof that boldness guided by virtue sustains strength. Overcaution is not safety, it is decay dressed as prudence. To live beyond overcaution is to embrace life as experiment. Each day offers the chance to test strength, expand boundaries, and confront the unknown. The Stoic does not wait for perfect certainty. They trust preparation, reason, and resilience. They act. Through action, they reveal their power. The cautious dream, the disciplined do. And in doing, they transcend fear itself. Overcaution ends when one accepts that death itself is the final risk already taken at birth. Every moment between birth and death is participation in uncertainty. The Stoic faces this truth without trembling. Knowing that the end is inevitable, they choose to live without delay. To them, risk is not an enemy but a teacher, the instrument through which virtue is refined. The cautious avoid the lesson. The Stoic learns it until fear is replaced by mastery. To live as the Stoic is to move forward under pressure, to act with steadiness in uncertainty, and to embrace life as a proving ground for courage. Overcaution dies in the face of action. Each step forward reclaims freedom from fear. The disciplined do not wait for safety. They create it through strength. Life does not promise security, only opportunity. The Stoic accepts this truth and acts with clarity. The cautious hide from it and fade quietly into irrelevance. Silent killer number 6. Pessimism. Pessimism is the slow corruption of perception. It begins as realism and ends as resignation. It tells the mind that seeing the worst is wisdom, that expecting failure is intelligence, that hope is naivety. The Stoic rejects this disease of thought. To the Stoic, perception is a tool, and a dull tool cuts nothing. Pessimism dulls it further with every complaint, every cynical prediction, every refusal to believe in the possibility of progress. It robs a person not of ability, but of perspective. The pessimist convinces themselves they are a realist, yet their realism is selective. They catalogue only what fails, never what endures. They count only the cracks, never the structure that holds. Stoicism trains the mind to see both, to observe the world without distortion, neither blinded by optimism nor chained by despair. The pessimist is chained. They find meaning in proving futility. They call their despair insight and their defeat wisdom. The Stoic calls it surrender disguised as sophistication. Pessimism spreads like a shadow. It darkens every ambition before it begins. The person infected with it cannot see opportunity because they look only for threats. They mistake caution for intelligence, inaction for prudence. The Stoic sees life as neutral, a field where action determines meaning. The pessimist sees life as hostile and withdraws. Stoicism commands engagement. Pessimism promotes retreat. One builds strength through confrontation. The other builds weakness through avoidance. Pessimism breeds through habit. Every time one interprets difficulty as doom, the mind reinforces despair. The Stoic interrupts this cycle by questioning perception. What evidence supports this fear? Is this conclusion useful? Can I act on this thought? The pessimist never asks these questions because their belief in hopelessness feels righteous. They mistake emotional fatigue for insight. Stoicism restores discernment by aligning perception with reason. Facts, not feelings, determine perspective. The pessimist calls themselves a realist because it spares them from responsibility. If all efforts are doomed, then inaction is justified. The Stoic rejects this comfort. They know that even if success is uncertain, duty remains. The pessimist believes that failure is proof of futility. The Stoic believes it is proof of effort. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not be ashamed of help. It is your duty to accept it." The Stoic accepts imperfection in self and world, yet moves forward. The pessimist refuses the world until it matches their ideal, which means they refuse it forever. Pessimism poisons energy. The mind weighed down by disbelief moves slower, speaks slower, works slower. It infects those nearby, spreading fatigue through conversation and doubt through collaboration. The Stoic protects their environment by controlling tone and presence. They know that moods are contagious. A single pessimist can demoralize a group more efficiently than any external failure. The disciplined person monitors their own speech for signs of decay, sarcasm, cynicism, dismissal, and replaces them with clarity and effort. Every pessimist once believed in something. Disappointment hardened that belief into armor. They confuse protection with wisdom. The Stoic learns from pain without allowing it to define them. To learn from loss is strength. To identify with loss is weakness. The pessimist carries their injuries as identity. They become curators of misfortune, telling stories of what went wrong as justification for doing nothing now. The Stoic remembers pain only as data, not destiny. Pessimism thrives in comfort. The person who risks little has time to imagine endless catastrophes. The Stoic is too occupied with effort to indulge in despair. Work is medicine. The body in motion purifies thought through discipline. Idleness feeds pessimism. Productivity starves it. When one acts in alignment with purpose, they no longer have time to predict defeat. The pessimist observes. The Stoic participates. The pessimistic mind confuses criticism with intelligence. They believe that to find flaws is to demonstrate insight. Stoicism teaches that criticism without contribution is vanity. To see what is wrong is easy. To repair it is work. The pessimist invests entirely in diagnosis, never in cure. The Stoic moves from observation to improvement. They accept imperfection as material for refinement. The pessimist uses imperfection as justification for apathy. Pessimism also alters language. The words one uses shape the architecture of thought. The pessimist speaks in negation. Can't, won't, never, impossible. Each phrase becomes a brick in the wall of their own imprisonment. The Stoic speaks in possibility, can, must, will, endure. Language, disciplined, becomes a weapon against despair. The Stoic monitors their speech to ensure it reflects command, not surrender. The pessimist rehearses limitation until it becomes law. The Stoic knows that the world is not kind or cruel. It is indifferent. This neutrality is freedom. The pessimist sees the same neutrality and calls it cruelty. Their expectations of fairness create their suffering. The Stoic expects difficulty, not disaster. They approach life as a soldier approaches terrain, to be navigated, not pitied. Pessimism confuses difficulty with doom. The disciplined mind knows that hardship is inevitable, but misery is optional. Pessimism is often learned from association. People absorb the tone of those they surround themselves with. The Stoic curates company as carefully as they curate thought. They prefer few companions of high character to many who complain. The pessimist gathers others who confirm their despair, forming circles of shared decay. The Stoic circle speaks of solutions, not sorrows. Environment shapes endurance. Pessimism spreads when surrounded by agreement. The pessimist rarely creates because creation requires faith. They fear being wrong more than they desire to build. Stoicism demands creation, of character, of order, of meaning. Each act of creation challenges despair. The pessimist dissects. The Stoic constructs. The difference between the two is courage. To create is to risk failure. To destroy through criticism requires none. The Stoic embraces the risk of ridicule. The pessimist hides behind judgment. Pessimism also corrupts gratitude. It blinds one to the simple stability that exists amid chaos. The Stoic practices gratitude as discipline, not emotion. Gratitude grounds the mind in what is functional, not what is missing. The pessimist fixates on absence. They cannot enjoy the warmth of the sun because they are waiting for the storm. Gratitude transforms perception from deficit to sufficiency. It restores proportion, revealing that life, though imperfect, is still abundant. The pessimist treats every obstacle as a prophecy of failure. The Stoic treats every obstacle as a test of method. This distinction defines resilience. Pessimism sees problems as punishment. Stoicism sees them as process. The pessimist curses the mountain. The Stoic climbs it. Their strength grows with each ascent. While the pessimist convinces themselves the climb is impossible, the mountain remains indifferent. Only the climber changes. Pessimism corrupts leadership. The leader who cannot believe in victory demoralizes their followers. The Stoic leader balances realism with resolve. They acknowledge obstacles without surrendering to them. Their presence alone communicates faith in the mission. The pessimist communicates despair, cloaked as maturity. The Stoic knows that leadership demands energy. To drain others through cynicism is to betray responsibility. A leader's tone determines the group's endurance. Every pessimist thinks they are protecting themselves from disappointment. In truth, they are ensuring it, expecting the worst guarantees it will color every outcome. The Stoic protects themselves through detachment, not despair. They prepare for loss, but do not live in it. Expectation of hardship without obsession over it creates calmness. Pessimism anticipates pain so vividly that it experiences it before it arrives. The Stoic saves energy for when it does. The pessimist sees history as proof that progress is futile. The Stoic sees history as evidence that endurance prevails. Every generation has known crisis and overcome it. The pessimist edits history to focus only on ruin. The Stoic reads the same record and sees resilience. Perspective determines legacy. To focus solely on decay is to erase courage from the human story. The Stoic restores balance by honoring both suffering and triumph. Pessimism deforms logic. It begins with one failure and extends it to all future attempts. It turns evidence into prophecy. The Stoic uses reason as a corrective lens. They ask, does this failure define all or only this moment? The pessimist answers yes, without examination. Stoic logic ends that distortion. Failure belongs to circumstance, not identity. To assign permanence to temporary events is to surrender to delusion. The pessimist believes hope is fragile. The Stoic sees it as discipline. Hope to them is not a wish, but a posture, an act of standing upright amid uncertainty. Pessimism crouches before fate. Stoic hope walks forward. It expects difficulty but commits regardless. This form of hope cannot be broken because it does not depend on outcome. It depends on character. The pessimist waits to be proven wrong before believing again. The Stoic believes by principle, not by evidence. Pessimism is contagious because it justifies weakness. It comforts the undisciplined by declaring effort pointless. The Stoic, through example, breaks this contagion. Their calm persistence invalidates the pessimist's argument. Success achieved through endurance is the ultimate refutation of despair. The pessimist preaches futility. The Stoic demonstrates power. To eliminate pessimism, one must return to direct experience. The pessimist lives in abstraction, theories, predictions, judgments. The Stoic grounds themselves in action, work, movement, service. Direct experience destroys illusion. The pessimist says, it won't work. The Stoic acts and discovers what works. Truth is revealed through effort, not speculation. Pessimism rots the creative instinct. It convinces a person that no effort can change anything, so they stop imagining. The Stoic guards imagination as sacred, for it is the architect of possibility. They use imagination to strategize, not to despair. The pessimist uses it to forecast loss. The same power of mind builds empires or destroys them depending on direction. Stoicism trains that power toward construction. Pessimism masquerades as maturity in modern times. The cynic is praised for sharpness, the optimist dismissed as naive. The Stoic transcends both labels. They neither inflate hope nor drown in doubt. They act, observe, adjust, and persist. Maturity is not disbelief. It is balance. The Stoic lives in that balance, seeing clearly without surrendering enthusiasm. The pessimist's sharpness cuts only themselves. The greatest cost of pessimism is potential. It steals the future before it arrives. The pessimist never knows what could have been because they never tried. The Stoic knows that effort without guarantee is the definition of courage. They act not because success is assured, but because inaction guarantees defeat. Every opportunity lost to pessimism is a life lived beneath capacity. Stoicism restores belief in effort as its own victory. Pessimism often disguises itself as humor. Sarcasm becomes a shield against vulnerability. The Stoic may laugh, but never with bitterness. Their humor is light, never corrosive. The pessimist jokes about failure until they embody it. Words repeated with conviction sculpt identity. Stoic discipline guards speech from decay. What one repeats becomes what one believes. Pessimism collapses the timeline of life into inevitability. It says nothing will improve, nothing will last, nothing matters. The Stoic answers, Everything matters precisely because nothing lasts. Impermanence gives urgency to virtue and meaning to effort. The pessimist sees impermanence as futility. The Stoic sees it as motivation. To act nobly in a temporary world is the highest form of strength. The pessimist distrusts joy. They believe it precedes punishment. The Stoic embraces joy as proof of harmony between mind and world. To feel gratitude or pride without fear is not ignorance, but mastery. Joy, to the Stoic, is evidence of alignment with nature, the moment when reason and existence agree. The pessimist sees joy and braces for loss. The Stoic experiences it fully, knowing loss is inevitable but unthreatening. Pessimism thrives in untested minds. Experience through adversity purifies it. Each obstacle faced and overcome disproves the theory of futility. The Stoic collects these disprovals as evidence. They turn endurance into philosophy, experience into conviction. The pessimist avoids such tests and thus remains convinced of weakness. Without trial, belief in power cannot exist. The Stoic practice against pessimism is deliberate optimism, not blind hope, but disciplined expectation of possibility. It is a choice renewed daily to see opportunity where others see decay. This choice transforms perception from decay to direction. The pessimist waits for evidence of improvement before acting. The Stoic acts and creates the evidence. Pessimism fades when purpose reclaims control of the lens. At its root, pessimism is fear of disappointment. The pessimist avoids hope to avoid pain. The Stoic accepts pain as part of existence and therefore no longer fears it. They understand that disappointment is temporary, but despair is permanent. Courage accepts wounds. Cowardice hides from them. The Stoic chooses the wound, heals, and continues. The pessimist hides and decays. To overcome pessimism, one must restore trust in possibility. This begins with discipline, rising early, engaging in work, maintaining order. Each completed task contradicts the belief in futility. Evidence builds conviction. The pessimist speaks of what cannot be done. The Stoic quietly does it. Over time, success silences despair more effectively than argument. Pessimism will always tempt the weary mind. It offers rest through surrender, promising wisdom without effort. The Stoic refuses this seduction. Wisdom without action is decay. The disciplined life preserves strength through continual engagement with reality. Each day lived with composure and effort is rebellion against despair. The pessimist predicts decline. The Stoic demonstrates ascent. In that ascent, pessimism dies. Silent killer number 7. Complaining. Complaining is the final erosion of strength. It is the sound of a mind that has surrendered authority over itself. It begins as expression and ends as identity. The person who complains announces to the world that they have lost command of response. The Stoic does not complain because they understand that complaint changes nothing external, but weakens everything internal. It is the confession of defeat before battle, the public declaration of dependence on circumstances. Every word of complaint chips away at dignity. The complainer believes that expression relieves pain. In truth, it multiplies it. Words spoken in bitterness reinforce helplessness. Each complaint rehearses weakness until it becomes habit. The Stoic holds silence not out of repression, but out of principle. To speak of misfortune without action is waste. Speech is meant to clarify and strengthen. Complaint muddies and diminishes. The disciplined person filters language the way a warrior maintains a blade, to cut through illusion, not to dull its edge against self-pity. Complaint thrives in those who have forgotten the boundary between control and chaos. They narrate what cannot be altered instead of mastering what can. Stoicism trains the mind to reverse this direction. When pain arrives, the Stoic asks, "What belongs to me here? What can be shaped? What can be learned?" The complainer asks, "Why me? Why now?" This question has no answer, only echo. Complaint seeks comfort, not clarity, and therefore finds neither. To complain is to demand that reality conform to emotion. The Stoic accepts that reality is indifferent to emotion. The disciplined person does not ask the world to change tone to match their mood. They adjust themselves to meet reality on equal terms. This adjustment is power. The complainer refuses adjustment and remains trapped in friction. Their words become constant reminders of their own resistance to truth. Complaining is the opposite of gratitude. Gratitude expands awareness. Complaint contracts it. When one complains, they look only at what offends them. When one practices gratitude, they see what remains stable amid turmoil. The Stoic chooses the latter deliberately. Gratitude is not blind optimism. It is perspective through reason. It trains the mind to see endurance as fortune, to find value in the ability to withstand. The complainer sees only deficiency. Their focus becomes their prison. Complaining also spreads weakness through association. Each word of complaint invites sympathy, and sympathy strengthens helplessness. Groups built on complaint dissolve into shared victimhood. The Stoic avoids such company. They know that character deteriorates in environments where self-pity is currency. Strength requires silence under pressure, not performance of misery. Those who complain together sink together. The Stoic speaks to solve, not to suffer aloud. To complain is to externalize power. The complainer believes their peace depends on the behavior of others, the state of politics, the temperament of weather. The Stoic believes peace depends on discipline of perception. No storm, no insult, no inconvenience can take what is governed within. The complainer blames, and by blaming, they bind themselves to what they hate. The Stoic accepts, and by accepting, they rise above it. Complaint multiplies chains. Acceptance breaks them. Every complaint is an argument against responsibility. It says, "I cannot act because something else has acted upon me." The Stoic responds, "Then I will act within what remains." Life never removes all control, it only shifts it. The complainer searches for fairness, the Stoic searches for function. What can be done now? What virtue applies here? These questions restore direction. Complaint erases it. The habit of complaining weakens the mind's tolerance for difficulty. Each time one verbalizes frustration, they deepen their attachment to comfort. The Stoic resists this by treating difficulty as training. They interpret adversity as an opportunity to demonstrate composure. The complainer interprets adversity as proof of persecution. Perception determines growth. The Stoic refines, the complainer regresses. Complaining becomes addictive because it rewards the ego. It invites validation, pity, and attention. These are counterfeit forms of connection. The Stoic seeks strength in solitude, not sympathy in noise. They prefer to resolve privately what others broadcast publicly. Silence preserves dignity. Complaint purchases attention at the cost of it. The disciplined person knows that what one repeats becomes identity. To complain daily is to become complaint itself. The complainer often mistakes complaint for honesty. They call their negativity realism. The Stoic understands that truth is not served by repetition of despair. Truth must be aligned with solution. To say "this is hard" is acceptable only if followed by "this is what I will do." The complainer stops at declaration. The Stoic continues to execution. The first builds stories. The second builds results. Complaining warps perception of time. The person consumed by it relives offenses endlessly. Each retelling renews pain. Stoicism teaches closure through action and detachment. Once a situation is understood and addressed, it is released. The complainer reanimates every injustice to sustain self-importance. The Stoic buries what is finished. Peace cannot coexist with perpetual resurrection of grievance. Complaint is mental noise. It drowns the subtle voice of reason beneath the volume of reaction. The Stoic cultivates quiet strength, conserving words for necessity. Their silence is not weakness, but precision. A calm response signals control. Complaint signals chaos. The disciplined person speaks less, acts more. Their restraint communicates mastery. The complainer's abundance of words reveals the absence of it. Complaining transforms hardship into identity. The person begins to see themselves as perpetually wronged. Stoicism refuses such narratives. The disciplined person never lets pain become personality. They acknowledge it, process it, transcend it. Complaint arrests the process at the first stage. Pain is immortalized through storytelling. The Stoic lets the wound close. The complainer keeps it open for display. The complainer lives in judgment of others. Every external action becomes evidence of personal slight. The Stoic releases judgment because it serves no purpose beyond ego maintenance. To judge is to drain attention from action. The disciplined person redirects judgment towards self-improvement. What can I do better? Replaces, why are they like this? Complaint thrives on comparison. Stoicism dissolves it through accountability. Complaining also deteriorates leadership. No one follows those who constantly broadcast weakness. The Stoic leads by stability. When others panic, they remain unmoved. Their example instructs without speech. The complainer instructs only in defeat. Their words create fatigue, not focus. A leader who complains teaches subordinates to depend on excuses. A Stoic leader teaches composure as command. Complaining weakens gratitude, but it also destroys discipline. It excuses inconsistency. The complainer says, I couldn't help it, instead of, I didn't manage it. Language shifts responsibility from will to circumstance. The Stoic reverses this pattern. They interpret every lapse as an opportunity to strengthen control. By owning outcomes, they reclaim authority. Complaint is a language of victims. Accountability is the language of Stoics. In its advanced form, complaining turns to resentment. The person not only voices dissatisfaction, but begins to enjoy it. Their suffering becomes superiority. Stoicism disarms this by replacing resentment with acceptance and effort. To accept does not mean to agree. It means to stop wasting energy on what cannot change. To act replaces bitterness with movement. Every step forward humiliates complaint. The complainer also corrupts relationships. They draw people into cycles of shared negativity. Their words become poison that infects those who listen. The Stoic speaks to strengthen, not to spread decay. Their conversations elevate thought, not exhaust it. They protect the mental hygiene of their circle by abstaining from complaint. Energy is conserved, clarity preserved. The complainer depletes both. The world rewards complaint because it entertains. It fills the air with noise and gathers attention. Stoicism rejects attention bought with decay. The disciplined person seeks impact, not applause. Their silence carries more influence than the loudest grievances. They know that credibility comes from example, not expression. Complaint may attract sympathy, but composure commands respect. Complaining becomes a ritual of self-importance. The person believes their suffering deserves constant acknowledgement. The Stoic replaces this hunger for validation with service. They direct focus outward, to family, to work, to contribution. Service silences self-obsession. When effort replaces expression, strength replaces weakness. Complaint fades because attention is no longer trapped within. The cure for complaining is gratitude expressed through action. The Stoic practices gratitude by living according to virtue. They do not merely list blessings, they use them. The complainer counts possessions. The Stoic counts responsibilities. To act upon gratitude transforms it into growth. The complainer waits for conditions to inspire them. The Stoic acts because discipline demands it. Movement replaces murmuring. To stop complaining is to begin commanding. The person who refuses complaint gains immediate clarity. Their mind stops rehearsing injustice and starts rehearsing strategy. Silence creates space for thought. Within that space, reason reclaims control. Each moment without complaint strengthens focus. The disciplined person becomes a force of calm amid chaos. The Stoic understands that complaining is incompatible with mastery. Mastery demands full ownership of perception and response. Every word of complaint is a withdrawal from that ownership. To live as a Stoic is to refuse surrender of mental sovereignty. When pain comes, they analyze. When failure arrives, they adapt. When insult strikes, they remain unshaken. The complainer flinches at every touch of fate. The Stoic stands firm within it. To live without complaint is not to live without feeling. It is to channel feeling into action. Stoicism refines emotion into energy. Anger becomes focus. Sadness becomes understanding. Frustration becomes endurance. Complaint converts all emotion into noise. Stoicism converts it into movement. The difference is transformation versus stagnation. Every moment offers a choice, to complain or to construct. The complainer builds nothing. The Stoic builds everything from the same material: hardship, fatigue, disappointment. The raw clay of experience can form despair or discipline. The shape depends on the craftsman. The complainer molds chaos. The Stoic molds command. The ultimate lesson of Stoicism is sovereignty over the inner world. Complaining hands that sovereignty to chance. It declares that fate has the final word. The Stoic answers with silence, with labor, with calm persistence. Their refusal to complain is not passivity, it is rebellion. It is the assertion that mind is master, not servant. The complainer kneels before circumstance. The Stoic stands above it. Complaining is the noise of surrender. Silence is the sound of mastery. The Stoic chooses silence, then movement, then meaning. They understand that strength requires discipline of speech as much as discipline of thought. In a world addicted to grievance, the silent, composed individual becomes extraordinary. The complainer speaks endlessly of struggle. The Stoic shows what